Hey everybody, Mark Herman, aka LA Bengal fan on Twitter, repping the Bengals for the AFC Northerners. We're going to spend this episode previewing the upcoming Detroit game, as well as talking about Marvin Lewis's comments both before and after the game and some possible coaching replacements. We're actually going to spend a lot of time on that. And we'll touch a little bit on AJ McCarron and whether he should be starting or not. So let's get started. Both tackles are out this week. Unfortunately, on the second to last offensive play in the Minnesota game, Andre Smith got his leg rolled up on. So he's out. He's out. So our most seasoned tackle, Winston, is pretty much all we've got going into this game. So a bad offensive line just got worse. And adding to all that is that Dre, Mixon, and Tez are all still in the concussion protocol. So we don't have any indication that they're going to come back this week. So things look pretty bleak going into this Detroit game. Also, you take into account what we've seen in terms of effort the last 2 weeks. And this team's pretty much quit. They've quit on Marvin. It's a shame that we're not auditioning Paulie G as an interim coach this week, but we're not. And Marvin's still there. And so there's no reason to think that we're going to see anything different this week. I encourage fans, if you don't have to go to the game and you can afford to eat your tickets, eat your tickets. You're lining Mike Brown and Katie Blackburn's pockets with parking money, concession money, stuff like that. Send them a message that you're not happy with the work product, and the way you do that is by not showing up at the stadium. So that's all I can say. I understand if you can't afford to do that, then go to the game, but try to eat before you go and don't buy anything, and maybe take mass transit to the game. Something like that, where you're not lining, you're mitigating how much money you put in the Brown family's pockets. Detroit, this is a meaningful game for them. They need to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. They've proven they can get to the quarterback. They have a decent defense, so it's going to be a tough game. And they have an offense, and our defense, as you saw, without the linebackers there, we're dead meat to tackles or tight ends over the middle. That type of running backs out of the backfield. I mean, that's the linebackers' job, and we don't have linebackers to cover. So we're going to see Evans and Nickerson get some more game experience, which isn't a bad thing, but you're going to see it in the product on the field and the outcome of the game. So don't expect anything different than you saw in Minnesota this coming Sunday. We should start AJ McCarron. That's my feeling. I've been saying it for a long time. The Bengals going into next year will not be able to keep both quarterbacks. Now, AJ McCarron filed a grievance. He wants to be an unrestricted free agent. The Bengals and the NFL are contending he's a restricted free agent. Either way, we need to know what we have with him. We're only going to be able to keep one of those two quarterbacks. Dalton has been paid all his guaranteed money, so he's no salary cap hit to us. We're basically on a year-to-year contract with him. I'd like to see what AJ has, and I'd like to give him a fair chance. Instead of bringing him in the last half of a quarter of a game that's already done, why don't we let him take first-team reps? Why don't we let him show us what he can do? I don't understand it. We should be playing him right now. They're not. In either case, we're only going to have one of those two guys next year. So I'd like to get a better look at McCarron and maybe showcase him. If he shows just some flashes, we can get a decent maybe trade him. The Browns were interested in him. Clearly, we can put a first-round tender on him. Now, that costs about $3 million to put a first-round tender on him. But if he shows something and we could get the first-round pick, then it's worth it. So, let's see. But it makes sense, so the Bengals won't do it. Now, let's get into the Marvin Lewis thing. Marvin Lewis, the reports came out before the game that Marvin Lewis was not going to coach in 2018. Couldn't have come out at a worse time. This team was flat. They quit. Then after the game, he says he never said that. But my feeling is ESPN and Adam Schefter wouldn't have reported it unless they had gotten reports about it. And Hugh Jackson in a press conference later said, he alluded to the fact that, he knew Marvin was on his way out. But that means that Marvin's talking to people. Marvin's reaching out and seeing what, sending his feelers out to see what kind of a job market there is for him, whether it be a front office or a coaching. Then in his press conference later, he was asked if he planned on coaching next year. He said, yes, he did. And then he was asked, do you plan on coaching the Bengals, and there was kind of a pause, and he said, sure. Like it's clear that he's moved on, and so it's clear that we need to move on. Why we're not moving on right now, I don't know. Once again, that makes sense, so we won't do it. But so it looks like we're going to stuck with Marvin for a couple more games. But let's talk about some possible coaching candidates. And I've seen a lot of names thrown out. I've been following Reddit. I've been watching some Facebook live shows. And I'm reading the comments to see what people are thinking. And also the comment sections here, I've gotten into some really good conversations with different people about what coaches. John Gruden's name always comes up. John Gruden makes $8 million a year working for ESPN. So why would he leave that job? He would really, really want to have to coach. He could just sit up in the booth with no pressure on him and just talk about the games, and he makes $8 million a year. So it's not going to be money that gets John Gruden out of the booth. I don't think he leaves the booth. There's no reason to. And the same reason, I don't know what Cowher makes, but I'm sure he makes a comfortable living, so I don't think we see Cowher out there. Another name that's been thrown out a lot is Urban Meyer, because of his ties to the University of Cincinnati, but I don't think Urban Meyer leaves Ohio State, although I understand that Urban Meyer is a huge Bengal fan, but I don't think we get Urban Meyer. These are all dream names. And then the name I would really love to see, and I think it's Speedy Reedy and I exchanged a lot of comments, but we talked about, and he's a Ravens guy, but we've talked about Jim Harbaugh, somehow wooing Jim Harbaugh away from Michigan. Oh, what a dream that would be to have two Harbaughs every year in the AFC North. Not to mention, we can only imagine what kind of a relationship Tomlin and Jim Harbaugh would have. You know, being here in Los Angeles with the USC, and I'm a USC fan, I'll never forget the What's Your Deal game where Jim Harbaugh, up by multiple scores, scores a late touchdown when he's the coach of Stanford, and then goes for two. And the meeting with Pete Carroll in the middle of the field with the What's Your Deal, and everybody read their lips, was just, you could just see that type of a chippy relationship or competition forming between Harbaugh and Tomlin. But all this is speculation. It's all fantasy. I don't think that Mike Brown would ever cut loose with the amount of money it would take to woo Harbaugh out of Michigan, unless Harbaugh really wants the job. Remember, this, outside of a bad offensive line, this is a very good roster. I've said before in multiple episodes, this is a really attractive coaching position. So somebody is going to land with a really good roster, high draft pick, possible bonus pick for with AJ McCarron. I mean, it's a perfect situation. It's a setup for a coach of the year type of job turning around. But we really need a culture change, which is why I really would love Jim Harbaugh, because he would bring accountability and a tough-nosed edge and discipline, because God knows this team lacks discipline. It lacks focus. You can go back to the end of the playoff game. We blew it. From the fumble all the way through the meltdown. I mean, this team, you know, they get their buttons pushed by the Steelers and they fall into the trap time and time again. And the only thing that's going to cure that is better coaching. So those would be the fantasy list that I had. And Jim Harbaugh would be on the top of my list, way ahead of Gruden. I would much rather see Jim Harbaugh. But like I said, I don't think that happens. Let's go to possible real coaches, that, you know, coaches, more realistic acquisitions that we could get. Obviously, Paul Gunther would be the leading candidate if we promoted from within. Not going to be a popular decision with the fan base. But the fan base wants new blood. They want, like I said, a change of culture. Jim Bob Cooter's name has come up quite a bit. He's the offensive coordinator on Detroit. Wouldn't be a bad hire. He would be a similar hire to like the Rams, Sean McVay type of hire, in that you're bringing in a young guy who's never been a head coach, but, you know, who knows? Look, it's worked for the Rams. Another name I've heard is Frank Reich. Obviously, he's the offensive coordinator on Philadelphia, and he's done a really nice job with Carson Wentz. So he's another name that comes up. The name that I want to throw out there for people, and this is a very attainable person, if we made if we pursued him, I think he would want the job, is Tom Coughlin. He has a front office job right now with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He was kind of pushed out of New York bad ending there, poorly played, much as the Eli Manning situation was poorly played this year in New York. But I think looking at our roster, if he wanted back into the AFC North, and he's been here when Jacksonville was in the AFC North, and he took Jacksonville to championship game, they're in their second year. You know, he's got roots here, and I think, like I said, this is a roster, and he's a very strict disciplinarian. So there would be no bullshit going on with the team if Tom Coughlin was the head coach. So those are the names I'm kind of looking at. So on the realistic side, I think Tom Coughlin would be my #1 pick. And on the fantasy side, I think Jim Harbaugh would absolutely be my #1 pick. I just don't think it's going to happen. But you know what? You can't fault a guy for dreaming. So that's it for this week. If you're going to watch the game or go to the game, you know, just have very low expectations going into this game, because we still have a bonehead Marvin Lewis there, and we still have play calling that's going to ask this offensive line with even less experienced people now to do things they're not capable of doing. So just, you know, bear in mind that that's what we're going to see this week. I don't even need to predict a score. You know, I don't know, 24-7. We'll get a consolation touchdown at the end. I don't know. It's really irrelevant, because we're kind of in shutdown mode, and this team's not embracing the spoiler role, which they could be doing the last week of the season against Baltimore. We could knock Baltimore out of the playoffs, but I don't see this team having the spirit or the coaching staff to do that. So, but we'll deal with that Baltimore game in a couple weeks. Some shout outs. Definitely check out the other videos. We have our Cleveland and Ravens guy just did a video. Check that out. You can always check out our Pittsburgh video. New Stripe City, Ace Boogie does a good show. Daddy-O at Cincinnati does a show on, I've seen his as, I think it's Daddy-O at Cincy. He's on YouTube. Also, shout out to Rocco's. We will do a group show. We're getting down to just doing them once a month or something. They're a lot of work to get together and edit, but we'll get together at some point, maybe after the first of the year, at Rocco's, and do a group show. But that's going to be more of a special show once a month kind of thing. And but definitely check out Rocco's Tavern. 5 locations. They're near USC, UCLA, Culver City, Old Town Pasadena, and Studio City. So we usually shoot at the Studio City location. So definitely check them out. And that will be it. I'm going to sign off, as I will until they're gone, with fuck Marvin Lewis and fuck Mike Brown for not firing Marvin Lewis and for giving us this crappy product, because we deserve better. Merry Christmas, everybody. Have a good Christmas Eve. I'll try to put up a post-game comment, and we will have a good rest of your week.